Bienvenidos a las conferencias virtuales para la tercera Convención Internacional de Historiadores Numismáticos Cartagena 2021, evento que venimos desarrollando en la bella ciudad de Cartagena desde el 1 al 5 de diciembre. Cabe destacar que este evento aglutina a los más importantes historiadores y numismáticos de más de 21 países participantes, siendo este uno de los foros más importantes que tenemos en el momento. El día de hoy tenemos como invitado a los Estados Unidos. Los Estados Unidos está representado por el señor Jesse Kraft. Jesse Kraft nos va a brindar la conferencia Un curioso escudo colombiano de la época de la independencia en las primeras monedas argentinas. Esta conferencia, cabe destacar, que va a ser desarrollada en el idioma inglés. Bueno, también permítame presentar como invitado el día de hoy al señor Andrés Cortázar. Andrés, como todos ustedes saben, él es presidente del Comité Internacional de Historiadores Numismáticos, que está desarrollando en este momento la tercera Convención Internacional de Historiadores Numismáticos en la ciudad de Cartagena. Y te invito, Andrés, para que nos des unas palabras y nos hables un poquito acerca de Jesse Kraft.
Bueno, muchas gracias, César. Buenas tardes para todos. Bienvenidos a una conferencia más de nuestra agenda virtual. En esta ocasión tenemos a Jesse Kraft representando a la ANS, a la American Numismatic Society. Good afternoon, dear friends. We're happy to introduce Mr. Jesse Kraft on representation of the American Numismatic Society. It's an honor to have him here. And welcome, Jesse. Thank you so much, Cesar. We can start now.
Thank you so much, Cesar. And Andre, I'm going to share my screen real quick.
Okay.
Just to reintroduce myself, Jesse Kraft. I'm the curator of the Americas at the American Numismatic Society, and I'm very, very happy to be here today. I'm going to present to you right now Latin American coinage in the United States, language as a key to their successful circulation, circa 1700 to about 1857, though those dates are a little fluid. I will speak in English today, though, as you can see, my PowerPoint will have Spanish subtitles, so it can be a little bit more accessible to everyone. So I have a lot of information to share in the next 20 minutes, so I'm going to just get right into it. So it's no secret that Spanish-American coins circulated in the United States. It was a phenomenon that happened all around the world around this time, the 17th and 18th centuries. In the British North American colonies, which became the United States later on, initially there were English coins, as you can see here on the left, a sixpence of James I and a shilling of Charles I, both of Great Britain or of England at the time. But by the 17th century, Spanish-American coins began to replace them. And you can see here on the right, we have a few cobs, an 8 reales from Philip IV and an 8 reales from Charles II. And as this happened, the English names also carried over to the Spanish-American coinage. Different regions had different values, and there were two reasons why this happened. This slide here shows the first reason, and that was to help keep hard and metallic currency in the local economy. This was not a phenomenon only in the United States, but also throughout the West Indies and other parts in the Americas where coins were given alternate values or sometimes even defaced with holes and other means to make them essentially worth a different amount than they would be in their home economy, and that would actually help them stay into these foreign, more localized economies. So as you can see here, by the late 17th century, we have different values arising for Spanish-American coinage in the British North American colonies. In New York, with 1675, they're worth 6.5 shillings. In New England, it ranged from 5 shillings to 6.25 shillings. In the Mid-Atlantic region, which is New Jersey and Pennsylvania and around there, about 5 shillings. Although in London, they remained really low as 4.5 shillings. So by giving these same exact coins higher values in these other places, they were able to stay in circulation rather than kind of get swept back up into the world economy. The second reason is a little bit more specific to the British North American colonies, in that paper currency was introduced in this area, and as time went on, as you can see here on the chart on the right, throughout the early 18th century, these pieces of paper depreciated and became less and less valuable compared to silver coinage. And this happened at different rates in different colonies. The chart to the right that we see here and the bill, they're both from Massachusetts, but the same thing happened in all the different colonies, but at different rates. And in the end, that led to different values for the same coins. So here we can see this chart on the bottom shows the different values in the colonies once they settled. And by the eve of the American Revolution, most of them have settled. You can see from 6 shillings per dollar to 8 shillings per dollar, all the way down to 4.25 shillings per dollar. It doesn't necessarily mean that a dollar was worth more or less in a different place, but the fact that they were, the dollars were subdivided differently. We all know, are familiar with 8 reales subdivided into 8 pieces, but imagine one being subdivided into 6 or 7.5 or 5, and that's exactly what is happening here. So once the colonies began to turn into states with the American Revolution, this phenomenon carried over into the states, into the federal period as well. It's not just a colonial thing that happened. It was kind of solidified with the introduction of continental currency, which we can see here, these 3 notes at the bottom. They were issued to pay for the American Revolution in between 1775 and 1781. And as you can see, they have really, really bizarre denominations: 1/6 of a dollar, 1/3 of a dollar, and even $80. And these might seem very bizarre to us, but they actually fit in really, really well with this colonial monetary structure. And 1/6 of a dollar actually equaled exactly 1 New England shilling. So it worked out perfectly. $80 equaled exactly 100 New York shillings. So these weren't necessarily odd denominations. They were actually very, very specific and fit the monetary system perfectly for the day. This is an entry from an account book by the account book of Thomas Shields, who is a goldsmith in Philadelphia. And it really gives a great glimpse of the hard money supply that was in Philadelphia at the time of the Revolution. This is all in one transaction, but we have Portuguese half-joes, we have Spanish American dollars, French crowns, and English shillings. So this one transaction literally had all the different types of money from the 4 main imperialist colonizers of the time. So it really, really is a really intriguing entry, and it shows how he named them and how they were spent at the same time. So after the Revolution, the United States became a country unto its own and decided to create a monetary system, and it was based directly on the Spanish American dollar. The size, weight, and fineness of the United States dollar was exactly to conform with this earlier Spanish American dollar. During this, though, those in the United States did not adopt the Spanish American names, and the language of the mill dollars, which were, again, British names, were carried over to the US counterparts. I have a little quote here right in the middle. It says, "It is a curious fact that although the Spanish supply then constituted the principal part of our current coins, Spanish names for those coins were practically discarded by the people of the United States." So people in the United States were readily willing to accept the coins as a form of payment. However, they never accepted the Spanish names. Here, this is essentially the same chart that I showed a few minutes ago, except it has now a third column to the right. And that shows the federal equivalent in dollars and cents, cents per shilling. It just decimalizes it essentially. I'd like to focus on these two coins in particular, the 1 real and half real coins. These were the most prevalent silver coins in all of the early United States, really up until the 1850s. And this was because there were so many Spanish coins in the world and not so many United States coins. And the mint had a hard time fulfilling the economy without any real major supplies of raw ore. So we continued to use Spanish American coins. This quote on the bottom bullet point here is kind of telling. It says the 4 pence, the 9 pence, the picayune, the shilling, the 6 pence, the fip, and the levy. These the reader would naturally understand to be seven different coins, whereas the 7 were in fact only 2 with various names. So this little quote mentions 7 different coins by name, but they're really only talking about these 2 coins, which absolutely dominated monetary circulation in the United States, again, up until the 1850s. Again, those 7 different names that I mentioned were not necessarily interchangeable by people within the same region, and they were different regions had different names for these coins based on their respective shilling and pence systems for the most part. Another quote at the bottom, it says, in fact, every locality has a separate epithet for the smooth-faced little joker. So it's a little joke saying that basically anywhere you go, you'll hear a different name for these coins. Here's another chart. I have them broken down. The top kind of section is just for the half real. As you can see all the way to the far right, those 4 are all worth 6 1/4 cents, but we're talking about a 4 pence, a 6 pence, and a fip, which is a shortened term for a 5 penny. And then again with the 12 1/2 cent piece, which is a 1 real coin, we're talking about 9 pence, 12 pence, and 11 pence coins. So and that's all dependent on the region. So in different regions, they had different shillings and pence systems, but on a federal level, it all equaled out to be the same. And another quote, these terms and their pronunciation pertain to their prevalent serious speech of the people and were no way exceptional or frivolous. So even though these words like fip and levy and picayune kind of sound funny, that was the honest word for them, and they weren't meant to be ironic or anything like that. And this newspaper clipping is interesting because it shows right in the middle, they're talking about the steamboat Joe Johnson, which went in between Washington, D.C. and Alexandria, Virginia. But it's kind of situated in between 3 different states. So we're talking about the Virginia 9 pence, a Maryland levy, or a York shilling. And again, those are all the same exact coin. It's a 1 real coin. But since we're kind of in this region where multiple shillings could be used by anyone who reads this, they have to explain essentially. So it's a little bit of interesting tidbit of information there. The penny, if anyone's ever been to the United States, you'll know that we call our smallest denomination the penny, even though the United States never had a denomination of that. It's really, again, a British coin. In Britain, they still use pennies and pence. But in the United States, we've always called our cents, our 1 cent pieces, pennies. And this really goes back to this earlier shilling and pence system, most particular to that in New York. In New York, 12 pence equaled 1 shilling. So therefore, 12 1/2 cents equaled 1 New York shilling. And if you break this down, divide 12 1/2 by 12, you get 1.04 cents equals 1 New York penny. Of course, it's very difficult to come up with 1.04 cents, so you round that down to 1 cent and you have 1 penny. And we still call our 1-cent pieces pennies to this day. And people still don't necessarily understand why. Some people even honestly get upset and angry when you do, because we have cents here, not pennies. But in fact, we're not talking about British pennies. When we say this in the United States, we're talking about New York pennies. And it's really kind of an interesting throwback that goes way back to the circulation of Spanish American coins in the United States. So the Coinage Act of 1857 was the act that forbade the use of foreign coins in the United States. But despite this, it's kind of hard to change society with a single law. So it really took generations of people in the United States to get rid of the word shillings and pence and all the different words associated with it. You can see at the bottom quote, it says, though the inconvenient Spanish currency has departed, we must continue to put up with its nomenclature and its ideality of value for a long time to come, we fear. This was in 1857. Again, foreign coins, including Spanish American, were no longer legally allowed to be circulated in the United States, but even right when that law was passed, they were fairly certain that the words, the English words that were affixed to the Spanish American coinage would continue to remain in use for some time after. And it did. In fact, in some places, in the most remote places, things like shillings and levies were used up until World War I. You can see here in 1895, Charles T. Tapman stated that rural New York and in New England, places people continued to use the word shillings. And in 1907, historian Charles A. White found that several rural regions of Pennsylvania and New Jersey continued to use the word levies, which again stands for 11 penny bit, which was a 1 real coin. So in conclusion, in the 1600s, English coinage came with the earliest settlers. By the late 1600s, a lack of English specie and a moderate supply of Spanish American coinage, though never enough, was introduced, and the English nomenclature carried over. In the 1700s, paper money was introduced, and it depreciated at different rates in the different colonies and settled at rates, and it settled at those rates from that point forward. By the late 1700s, the United States dollar was based on the Spanish milled dollar, but again, the United States Mint could never produce enough coinage until about mid-19th century. By the 1800s, Spanish silver wore down and was replaced by United States silver, and once again, English nomenclature carried over. By the late 1800s, slowly English nomenclature faded from usage, with the exception again of the penny. We still use that word, but other than that, we now use the denominations as they were given to these United States coins.
Muchísimas gracias, Jesse.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Jesse, for an amazing presentation. It was amazing. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. It's hard to take a 15-page paper and compress it down so much, but I hope I was able to do that for everyone today.
Yeah, you did an amazing job. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
¿Alguna pregunta, Andrés, para nuestro amigo Jesse Kraft?
En realidad no, César. El tema fue bastante explícito y bueno, más que una pregunta, lo que quiero es felicitar a Jesse por una excelente presentación y agradecerle por estar con nosotros, pendiente y por hacer parte de la tercera Convención Internacional de Historiadores y Numismáticos.
Muy bien. Muchísimas gracias, Jesse. Nuevamente nuestro agradecimiento por esta participación que has tenido dentro de esta tercera Convención Internacional de Historiadores y Numismáticos Cartagena 2021. A todos nuestros amigos que nos están viendo a través de las redes sociales, los invitamos a continuar viendo estas conferencias virtuales que estamos transmitiendo prácticamente durante todos los días de esta convención. Conmigo nos veremos en la próxima conferencia. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Gracias, Jesse. Gracias.
Gracias, Jesse.